This wasn't planned as a three-part series, but once the conversation got rolling and survivors were contributing their stories, it became very clear that we had messages that needed to be said in a way that it was digestible. You, the survivor, have come a long way since the hospital bed. And what this story is all about is not just getting out the words, but asking for help. And not asking like help like, can you bring me a glass of water? It's about advocating for yourself. It's about saying what you need and how you need it. It's about getting back your voice. And you're going to hear from survivors that are doing this. And that's what's so exciting about this episode. They didn't wait for permission. They found their voice. They're advocating for themselves, and they've come to the place in their journey where they are ambassadors about aphasia. Whether stroke or aphasia has taken away your voice, we are here to help you take it back. I can hardly wait for you to hear the stories. You don't have to stay silent. You get to take it back.
Hi, I'm Ralph Preston, and every Tuesday we have our Stroke Buddies Recovery and Science Zoom meeting. We bring to you different types of people, survivors, therapists, scientists, healthcare professionals, and the point is to supply you with some information that's valuable to your recovery. Today, back for the fourth time. Now I sound like a radio announcer or something. We have Genevieve Richardson, and Genevieve's a speech and language pathologist. She and I share a lot of the same philosophies on recovery and look at things the same way. And today we're going to talk a little bit about stroke stole it, take it back, speaking up, making your voice be heard, how to do that. So let's dive in.
Thank you, Ralph. Good morning, everybody. So we're talking about taking it back. So as Ralph said, I'm a speech pathologist. I've been doing this quite a long time, 30 years, as a matter of fact, coming up on 31 in a week. That is hard to believe. And what I wanted to talk about today is a theme. The theme is, how does the stroke survivor come out of being a stroke survivor to where you get to a place where stroke is a characteristic of you versus your entire identity. And it's a hard road. I haven't walked it myself, but I've walked it with so many survivors. My specialty is aphasia and thinking issues and all of those things together, because as each one of you know, the stroke not only impacts your body, but impacts your thinking. It impacts how you relate to others, how you perceive the world. Am I right? Oh, and I didn't say, I love interaction. If you guys want to put comments or questions in the chat, I'm going to ask questions as we go through this, because I want this to be interactive. I want to be here as a support, hopefully give you inspiration and give you some tools to help you take it back. So, take it back. A survivor's guide to reclaiming strength, dignity, and confidence after stroke. And this isn't just about speaking again. It's about getting back to your life. If we take Ralph as an example, you all know Ralph, you've been watching him and everything that he's been doing in his recovery. He wasn't willing to sit back and wait for recovery. He actively pursued it. He came home in a wheelchair, and with consistent practice and challenging himself and using household items, he rebuilt his mobility. And that's inspiring. So to get through stroke, part of it is finding a purpose. And we're going to talk about that more. I see some faces in this crowd who have done this. They figured out a way. And I want to hear their stories too, because I think it's an inspiration. One of my favorite things to do, I do have a podcast, and I love interviewing survivors who have figured out what to do, what to focus on, whether it's working on puzzles at home, whether it's starting a YouTube channel, whether it's recording videos and sharing it with the stroke community. Everybody has found a purpose, and it doesn't have to be a stroke related purpose. It just needs to be a purpose. It's something to get out of bed for. And I find that in my practice working with survivors, that takes a lot of encouragement. It takes a lot of processing through grief and coping and rebuilding identity and having people that support you. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So what I've learned about recovery, advocacy, and finding purpose after stroke, right there, that is the key. Purpose. Phil.
Yes.
You have done this. You have found a way to not only advocate for yourself, but for others. Can you tell real quick how you do that?
Okay, well, my name is Philip Oxendine, and what I did, I have my own podcast as for YouTube, and what I do, I talk about other people's stories. And there's people in there right now. One name is I can see him his name right now. But what I did, I found out that everyone has a story to tell. So what I did, I wanted to tell their stories too, and put it on their page too. So that's what I did.
Love it. And Ralph, what would you say is the trick or the strategy or the focus of a survivor, and how do you figure out that purpose and that way forward?
Tough question, but I'll give it a shot. Well, purpose is different for different people. I suggest if people are lost in terms of finding a new purpose, that they do things like try and adapt their old hobbies to their new physical capabilities. If that's not possible, then find new hobbies, get engaged in community, however you can do that, clubs, church, whatever. And lastly, if you're lost, another good opportunity is for finding purposes volunteering. If you were, well, I know somebody who was in dog rescue and she can't move the dogs around anymore. But I suggested volunteering at the dog rescue office. So there's always something you can do. And when you volunteer, you always meet good people. People who volunteer usually are always empathetic and have big hearts. So you'll meet good people that way. I think it's really important to find purpose, because without purpose, you don't have any hopes or dreams. And therefore, you don't make any plans. And if you're not hoping and dreaming and planning, I don't think you're moving forward. And of course, this isn't a whole other subject, about 10-hour subject. All this takes a certain level of acceptance about what's happened to you. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox now.
Thank you, Ralph. That was perfect. So why is speaking up so hard? Fear of judgment, right? Of the people that you know and the people that you don't know. The fear of going out in public when your body has changed, right? Or you have new equipment that is part of your daily ability to get around. Perhaps you have issues with thinking and finding your words, or being able to get all your thoughts out like you wanted to do. Sometimes it's lack of confidence. And it's hard, right? You got struck down with a stroke. Everything you knew before has now changed. And it's about rebuilding after that. And then we also know that overwhelming fatigue can be a real part of recovery. And there could be other reasons why speaking up is so hard. And when I mean speaking up, I don't just mean getting your words out. It's about voicing an opinion. It's about asking for what you need. If you're going into a store and you're walking with a cane and you're struggling with the door and somebody doesn't, necessarily stop to help you, do you have the words or the willingness to ask for somebody to hold the door for you? Whatever that is, it's speaking up, and that is scary. So we have hidden barriers, whether it's your individual barriers, your fatigue, your speech changes, maybe memory. Interpersonal, maybe you don't like others speaking for you, and so you close yourself off and don't allow that to happen. Or you have impatience, or there's misunderstanding. Policy, there's not a lot of protections. The world is not stroke and aphasia friendly. Yes, there might be some handicap accessibility, if you're in a wheelchair or those kinds of things, but often those are afterthoughts. One of my clients 2 years ago, they went to a national park. Trying to remember which one it was. I want to say it was in the Carolinas somewhere, but I don't exactly remember. But he is wheelchair bound and he cannot speak. His wife does all of that. He communicates remarkably well, even though he doesn't have words. He can vocalize, and you can tell from his facial expression, his mood, what he wants, what he needs, a lot of those things. Well, this wheelchair ramp was put in, and the angle was so steep that his wife couldn't push him up it. It was added in after the fact. There was this huge platform. It was like a patio, and it was just packed with tables and chairs. There wasn't anybody there, but there wasn't any room for, once he did get up that ramp, to navigate around, and it just wasn't safe for him. Or when they also traveled and the hotel room said they were handicap accessible, but on the wrong side, like the two rooms they had at the hotel were on the wrong side for the weakness he had on his body, right? He needed it on the other side so he could use his left arm and his left leg. And it was a miserable trip. So there's policies and physical barriers, right? And then community, lack of accessible spaces, limited awareness, right? I know I'm preaching to the choir because you're all here and you're living it every day. So how does one become a survivor to being an advocate? Where this can be any way you want to think of being an advocate for yourself. What is something you've done to advocate for yourself?
I don't want to monopolize it, but I got a couple things that I did. Well, two things. I was somebody who never accepted anybody's help. I didn't need anybody's help. And suddenly I did, and I found that it was difficult for me at first to accept the help, but I ran through my little brain, and I like to help people, and I thought to myself, if everybody had your attitude, you couldn't help anybody, and how would that make you feel? So you got people who are offering, and if you turn them down or don't accept their help, then you're denying them the opportunity to be kind and help you. And besides, you need the help. So that's how I got over that. And I'm a lot more accepting of people helping me, even though I don't need it at this point. One other way I advocated for myself was I found that some people, particularly my ex-wife, would try and do stuff for me. And, that's fine if people want to help, but if you don't want their help, it's not fine. So I spoke up and said to several people, I appreciate your help, always important to say that first. I appreciate your help. My doing these things is part of my getting better. If I need your help, I will speak up and ask for it. And that was a big game changer. I've seen people, just care partners particularly, smother their survivor by doing everything for them. And the survivor doesn't necessarily know to speak up. Anyway, so those are my two things and an observation about other dyads, other care partners, survivors.
I want to piggyback on what you said. You said something right there, Ralph, about how care partners, spouses jump in to help. And I think most folks that are here on this call are probably survivors. But I'd like to give you the perspective of a care partner and what they say. Yeah, from their perspective, they're terrified. They're terrified that you had a stroke. They're terrified that you could have another stroke. They're terrified you're going to fall and hurt yourself or something else. So they over help, right? But it often, we don't paint with too broad of a brush here, but they have to go through their own coping, grieving process because the stroke happened to you, but for them, it also happened to them, right? Their life changed. And I just really want to give that perspective because it's when you're working on your recovery, it's harder to see outside of yourself and perceive what other people might be perceiving regarding you. Does that make sense? I wanted to give you some information about care partners because care partners, spouses, significant others, adult children, even little kids, grandkids, they want to help. They want you to be better. They want you to live life. They may not say it that way, but their actions show that. And go ahead, Ralph.
They often don't know what to do, and you can provide them with some guidance. That's a really important part of speaking up, recognizing, thanking them, and letting them know what it is that they can do.
Advocacy, self-advocacy, advocating for yourself starts small. I think of it as circles that get bigger. You have to start with the people that are closest to you, that smallest circle. Start with the people in your house. Then your circle gets a little bit bigger. Start advocating with them. And you have to do this very purposefully. And if you need help with this, Ralph and his community, he's got a group for that. Reach out to me. You don't have to do this alone. All right, Mike, I put you off for too long. Are you still there?
Yeah. The one thing I found was to get out and find out how to help advocate for aphasia. I became an aphasia ambassador through the National Aphasia Association. I've learned so many things. I've learned so many great tips and tricks. I just need to get out there. And I found the new friends, the new people that do this. And the one thing you find when you have this is you lose all the people you used to think you were close to. But then everybody needs to realize all the people that you become friends with at that moment. And, I want to, like Phil, who you've talked to a few times, we have become very good friends.
Yeah, you're fine.
And, well, maybe, we may be, yeah, let's not talk about that, Phil. But Phil and I being ambassadors is how we kind of get the word out there. And there's so much that you can do. And what I did is I stopped being the victim and I started being the reason.
I love that.
So it's how I perceived how I was dealing with life every day. And I want to say something about your caregivers. My wife made the observation that you did where people don't realize what they're going through every day, every day.
Yeah.
She sat in a hospital for 14 days while they said they didn't know if I was going to wake up from whatever I was in. It's us going through this, not just me.
Yeah.
And it's us. Everybody on this call going through this, not just me. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you so much, Mike.
My favorite line from the movie Aphasia, Hope is a four-letter word, is what happens to one happens to two. And it really could be extended beyond two to,
Everybody.
yeah, everybody around the survivor.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's a great
It's
that's a
simple,
great thing.
simplifies it. I like things that are simple.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mike. Demont.
Yes, yes. The way I look at this whole situation, recovery is a process, and we have to look at this as a support system. We have these platforms and everything, and we have to look at how can we provide hope for others. Recovery, like I said, sometimes it takes a long period of time. I'm coming up to my 30th year in August of my setback. I think we start labeling stuff in our lives because, I suffered a stroke. We have to look at our mental part of it that says, I overcame a stroke. That's how we have to regain our power back, and it took me a while. Like I said, 30 years, it's coming up in 30 years. And this happened to me when I was 23 years old. And this is like when we have a support system with different type of groups that we can empower each other. So this is the thing of recovery is not by yourself. This is a team approach and we need that interaction with each other every day, not just a once a month situation. Because when I was going through my recovery rehab process, it was like most stroke groups was once a month. You know, Technology has changed a lot now since we have Zoom and everything. So now we have groups that we can interact with each other. And just like what Mike was saying about, we have a community now to help other people. And that's where I look at what Ralph was talking about with hope. What does hope stands for? People. It's helping other people every day, not just me, what I can do and stuff like that. As a community, we work together better as a team in a community, other than just a individual process. Yes, we need to work on our own internal self, but at the end of the day, I always have a support system like it. The other day, I had to call on Ralph to ask a couple questions of or certain things I didn't know about certain things. So, as a community, we have to reach out to each other and have to get to the point where we let's help each other. Just like you, Genevieve, for 30 years of being a speech pathologist, because you want to help people. And that's what life is about, not just what I can do or stuff like that. I think everybody's life has been turned upside down with this, and it's like we're trying to figure this stuff out and how to handle this thing called life as an overcomer. So if we get to the point where we can help other people, I think this will be a easier process for people other than just sitting there like wallowing in their own misery, which is a lot of people do. They're isolated. How
I've
can we
found,
get out? Yeah.
like Mike and Phil, I found that I'm not here to toot my own horn, but like Mike
Mhm.
and Phil, I found that helping people
Mhm.
is real valuable in terms of
Yeah.
makes you feel good, helps build community. You have no idea who you'll meet and what information you'll gain,
Absolutely.
and you're doing a little good at the same time. I think most stroke survivors would somehow like to make it easier on the next person, so
Mhm.
you can always get involved in. Yeah, you don't have to start your own group, you don't have to start your own YouTube channel, but there are always things that you can do to help the stroke community.
Absolutely.
And
Participation in groups,
it's
participation.
for practice for everybody. It's for practice for everybody.
Right.
Love it.